forgot to hit record. Um, so, um, so folks, Tarzan is speaking from your beautiful exploration of power. That could be the seed for an essay. With the judge's wife, we took it to another level, right? So now we're going to take a stab and look at how you. I'm going to take a look at how you worked on crafting an essay, right? A very short essay. That essay could also be expanded into a fuller essay. So by staying in step with all the homework assignments, you are technically possibly building your next essay, right? And of course, when the assignment comes through, you can pick a totally different story, because as some of you experience with poems like For My Own Protection and Curly, and a couple of other poems that Don't Look at My Arms, that sometimes you may have thought you wanted one story, and then you read one poem, and then you read another poem, you're like, hey, wait, I think that's something that might interest me to write about instead of the poem I was thinking. You might have that same situation with the short stories that we read in this class. Even the assignments are building toward that. You can pick one of those. You're certainly welcome to pick another one. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about The Judge's Wife. Just, you can unmute or chat and tell me, like, just an impression. Did you like it? Did you understand it? You know, you had to write about theme. What do you think what are the themes in The Judge's Wife? Any responses? No responses. People
Hi everyone. I did
Hey,
enjoy
Gregory.
the judges. I did enjoy the judge's wife. I mean, it was very powerful. You start off with this. How do you say that? This prediction for this baby who is going to fall in love, and because of that, and I mean his background also. He was the son of a prostitute. Father was unknown, and all his life he how do you say, he protected himself from falling in love or being passionate, or because of this prediction that this Turkish woman said. And then he glimpsed this woman, and unfortunately it's the judge's wife. And I don't know if he fell in love, because it doesn't really say, but he was mesmerized by her, and he was looking at every negative thing of her. And I'm assuming it's because he was just protecting himself to feel passionate towards a woman. But, and then later on, it got really deep with the judge, and using his mother as a bait, and his mother, committing suicide after, what's her name? Casidilla? The wife? Casida. Okay. I love the part where she was approached of what her husband was doing, and she actually approached her husband for the first time, but she did it publicly. And he came out, and just one look at her, he just like, he agreed with her. He just like melted, kind of. And his character is very strong and stern and powerful, being a judge. So I thought it was really great. And I mean, it just got better at the end. I mean, it was kind of sad, but I don't want to tell too much of the story, so I'll let someone else talk about it. So you could tell I did like the story. It was really good.
That was great. That was great. I was like, all right, Greg's done my job. We're done. Next story.
No, it was good. It was just like one climax after another. There was so many elements to it. And the way it was written, it was easy to follow.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, what Greg was talking about was a lot of the plot points and character development in the story, but it's interesting. We'll go over it. We'll see when we get to our PowerPoint what to do. Any other responses? I'm just looking for any, you can say whatever you want.
Hello?
Yes. Hey,
Hi,
April.
Professor. Hi, everyone. So what I like about Casita,
Yeah.
everybody judged her in the beginning. He judged her, of course, saying that she basically wasn't his type. I guess she seemed timid, from what everyone thought. But she was the main person who changed the judge's character. So he was this angry man, this rude man, and being with her, he started giving people in court chances and changing how he would, I guess, punish them.
Mhm.
So I thought that was beautiful too,
Mhm.
besides
Yeah.
everything Gregory said.
Yes, both of you mentioned that, right? It's interesting, the character of Casilda, right? She describes her of a little slip of a woman, right? This little tiny thing, this thing. Her family gets there and they can't handle the heat, they're fainting, right? This delicate person. That's how he characterizes her. But both in April pointed out that in a way that the impact that she had on her husband, right? He was this, I will see what I get to read, but I think one of the passages I highlighted to read was how he was, he judged everybody by the same harsh uh, measures. Like he said that you people, as I think murder and stealing a chicken were the same thing, right? And Casilda has an impact on him that helped him change. This stoic figure who dressed in black. There's passages where he's playing with his kids, right? So that becomes so that's the power of, in a way, Casilda. In Casilda, as we learn, Gregory stopped short of talking about the end, but at the end, she gets to the tough thug, right? That is Nicolas Vidal. She gets into him and she gets to make a transformation there as well as going through one herself, right? So it's interesting, the character of Casilda and the role she has. And I'm going to pause talking about her because as we talk about the whole, as we continue to talk about the story, and as I keep relating our discussions to possible essays, that you could do an entire character description on Casilda, right? That could be a very viable essay. What is the impact? Like, who is she? What is the impact? What is her role in the story, right? So it could be all of these things. You could do a character essay on the character of Casilda, who is the title, right? The title of the short story is The Judge's Wife, right? And so, and even though Nicolas Vidal is presented as the, hey Mabel, Mabel, even though Nicolas Vidal is the narrator, positions them as the protagonist in the story. In a sense, Casilda is in a way and the antagonist, right? She's the one that gets in the way of what he wants to do, which is to keep living a life of a tigre, right? Of a títere, of a thug, right? That kind of thing. So, so she gets in the way of that. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for your responses. So let's take I'm gonna take us through this little bit of a PowerPoint so that we can know a little bit about Isabelle Allende and about the story. And some of you have already done the work for me in this class, but that's excellent. I love it. Now, I don't know what it wants me to do. Okay, so we've got, we have the judge's wife. I'm just gonna make us small. Oops. Right? And so Isabel Allende, she's a Chilean journalist born in 1942 in Lima, Peru. And her best-known works include the novels The House of Spirits and The City of Beasts. And she's written over 20 books, I think more now. I have to update this. And they've been translated into 35 languages and sold 67 million, almost 70 million copies, which is a lot of books. During her career, she's received a lot of awards, including the Chilean National Prize for Literature and the Library of Congress Creative Achievement Award. And in 2014, she got a Medal of Freedom from President Obama. She with her life was changed when General Augusto Pinochet led a military coup in 1973, topping the Salvador Allende government. So she's the goddaughter of the previous president, the first socialist president of Chile. She was her, and she was his goddaughter and his kind of second cousin almost. Her father was his cousin. During an attack on the presidential palace, Salvador Allende was shot and killed. And after decades of controversy around the cause of the death, an autopsy confirmed in 2011 that it was suicide. So Isabelle Allende became active in aiding victims of the repression and brutality of Pinochet's regime, but realizing it was dangerous to stay in Chile, she left and with her husband and two kids in 75 and lived in Venezuela for many years and then migrated to the United States. Her first novel, The Suspirix, became a worldwide bestseller. The novel tells the story of two families living in Chile from the 1920s till 73 military coup. It also has a winery in it, and it weaves together elements of magical realism and political testimony. And it was starring Antonio Banderas and Meryl Streep and Glenn Close and a bunch of other people in it. So we talked about magical realism, and it's the idea, I think, and I think I may have mentioned this to the class, but I always say this, that there's an element of magical realism that for many of us that come from different cultures, from different countries, different continents, places like South America, like where she's writing from, from countries like Peru and Uruguay and Colombia and Venezuela and Brazil and countries in Africa like Senegal and Ghana and Nigeria and the Caribbean, Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican. Sometimes there's elements of magical realism that it's not necessarily magical realism, it's just real. When somebody talks about, lighting a candle for something, or somebody talks about, something spiritual, it's not the realm of magic, it's just the realm of our realities. So there's an element of magical realism that comes from this aesthetic, but also blurs this idea of magic and realism, like the real world and magic. So here, part of the definition that we're seeing is that it sometimes breaks the physical rules, and know that magical realism was a movement by Latin American authors led by Jorge Luis Borges and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and Isabel Allende is in there with these group of these guys. And so the idea is that myth and magic and reality, they mix, right? And that in order to battle against the staunch realism of Western literature. So Western literature was doing a lot with realism, and magical realism was challenging that, was offering a different view. She describes her fiction as realistic literature, rooted in an unremarkable upbringing and the mythical people and events that fueled her imagination. Her writings are equally informed by her feminist convictions, her commitment to social justice, and the harsh political realities that shaped her destiny. So in a way, what I'm talking about, the idea of magical realism being just real, that's the kind of a position that she takes. She takes that position that this is realistic fiction. So the fact that somebody, can scream and you can hear the screams all the way down the block to the end of the other block, she experiences it as something real, like that howl. So let's move on. So let's talk about the judge's wife characters, right? We talked a lot about Casilda, right? I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment. Right, we spent a lot of time talking about Casilda as one of the characters in The Judge's Wife, but we have a couple of other characters, right? And there's Nicholas Vidal, right? And so let me just go back to that so we can take a look at this. Let's just screen share, multitasking. Just go to the slide. All right, we did this. Okay, the judge's characters. So one of the first characters we meet is Nicholas Vidal. Can anybody unmute and tell me something about Nicholas Vidal?
At the beginning, he was described as having an iron heart,
Mhm. Having an
uh,
iron, yeah.
to protect um, um, his work on when he was predict that it was going to happen to him.
Yeah, right. We're talking about that. He's the one that right at the top, the first few lines of of the the story said that he is going to, it was predicted that he would lose his head over a woman. Lose his head, right? Um,
Yeah.
mhm.
Oh, I've I felt the yeah, and I felt like it you could have foretold I don't know how to explain that.
Mhm.
But I feel like it told us that he was gonna be changed by the women, and that he married Silda, and she changed him. I feel like she changed his view on
Well, she marries the judge. She definitely changes him.
judging.
But
Sorry.
you're right. You're right about her being that it was a foretelling, right? Right at the beginning, you're like, wait, he's going to lose his head over a woman. It said that's what it says, right at the beginning, right? So Nicholas, we get instantly painted as a character whose fate is to lose his head over a woman, right? And he doesn't know his father, right? Gregory said that in his description. His father is unknown, right? He leads a gang, right? His mom was a prostitute, right? Who works at a brothel. He's cold-hearted, iron-hearted, right? That's what Johnny said. And that he has an emotional distance from women. And the reason why he keeps that emotional distance, as I think Gregory was also sharing, was that because he's going to lose his head over a woman. So he's like, you know what? I'm not going to get too close. I'm not going to get all involved. I'm going to try to, because one of these women is going to take me down. And so I'm a man, and I'm going to be a hombrón, a tough guy, and I'll have sex with women because I have needs. But that's as far as it's going to go between me and women, right? So that's Nicholas. And then we have Casilda, and we've talked a lot about Casilda. And so these are some of the things that she's the judge's wife. That when we meet her, she's sweet and soft-spoken, slight and slim, like a little slip of a girl. But she also holds her ground, right? When that moment when the judge is like, I'm gonna trap Nicholas. The way I'm gonna trap him, so I don't have to go find him in the wilderness, I'm gonna bring him to me. I'm gonna capture his mother and put her in a cage in the middle of the town square and tell everybody, you'd better not dare give her any food or water, and then she's gonna suffer. And he's not gonna let his mother suffer. He's gonna come rescue her. And when he comes to rescue her, I'm gonna take him down. But that doesn't happen, right? Because Nicholas could see right through that. And since not getting involved with a mother because it might lose his head, he'll lose his head over it. His mother's a woman. He doesn't go, he doesn't fall in the trap. And then we learn that the one person that defies him, that holds her ground, is Matilda, and she gets the judge to release Juana, right? Doña Juana. So she holds her ground. She's a mother. She's unhappy. And in a sense, they say she's unsatisfied by her husband, like they're talking about sexually. There's a lot of these undertones of, descriptions. When Nicholas looks at Casilda, he says, her hands look like they don't know how to pleasure a man. And then later on, they said the judge, even though he's an older person, he doesn't know how to pleasure a woman, right? So they were talking about, even though they managed to have sex because they have kids, that doesn't seem the sex that they had is very pleasurable and very fun. Then we have the judge, right? Judge Hidalgo, who is, we gave pretty good descriptions of him earlier, but he's her husband, he's stern, he has a soft spot for his wife and kids, right? And we have Juana La Triste, or Juana the Forlorn, who's Nicholas's mother. She was a prostitute, wanted to abort Nicholas, and was not motherly, and she had a tough life, right? So these are the main characters that Isabelle Allende gives to us for this story. Now the plot, we're going to map out the plot, but I think Gregory did an incredible job at the beginning of the story. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So we talked about the plot because there isn't, you get a lot of character, and what happens is what I was just talking about, which Gregory talked about, except that we'll go to the very end. But so we've got this delicate woman who comes to marry this older man that she's doesn't probably we can say in a way doesn't love, but there's respect or something that involves between the two of them. She totally transforms his life, right? And but her husband is still trying to do the right thing and capture that criminal. And so what happens, as we mentioned, after they release the mother is so ashamed that her son didn't come rescue her. She killed herself, right? And then that sets Nicholas off, right? Because his mother killed himself. And he's like, no, that's it, he's gonna pay, right? And off he goes. And when the judge realizes I really went and really pissed him off, I need to save my wife and kids because he's not gonna stop. They escape, right? And so the judge is running off with his wife and his kids, Casilda and the kid, and Nicholas is coming after them. And the judge is so stressed, right, that he has a heart attack and dies, right? And on the run, his heart splits like a pomegranate, right? I love that image. You ever split a pomegranate open? You know, it's like all those red seeds and all that blood, and it's not blood, it's juice, but it looks like, so I love the imagery that she infuses into the story. And then Casilda realizes, oh, he's dead. This is not going to be good. So let's look at, let me do that. Let me read a little bit. Let me read the ending of it to you all. Let's do this, share screen. I'll give you a break for a second. Good. Here, yes. So yes, let's do this over here. Here it says, here's that line. Overburdened by the sleepless nights, the townspeople hostility, the blow of his pride, and the stress to the race to save his family, Judge Hidalgo's heart gave a massive jolt, then split like a pomegranate. The car ran out of control, turned several somersaults, and finally came to a halt in the ditch. It took Doña Casilda some minutes to work out what happened. Her husband's advancing years had often led her to think about what would it be like to be left a widow, yet she never imagined he would leave her at the mercy of her enemies. And she wasted little time dwelling on the situation. So she figures it out. She's like, okay, this crazy killer's coming after me. I gotta save my kids. So she takes her kids, she puts them in a cave, and then she goes, right, to wait for him, right? Here we go. She gathered the mother gave them one final glance at the kids, terrified and children clung to each other, then clambered back down the road. She reached the car, closed her husband's eyes, smoothed back her hair, and settled down to wait. She had no idea by how many men were in Nicholas Vidal's gang, but she prayed there were a lot of them. So it would take them all the more time to have their way with her. Okay, so she thought that. She said, what I need to do, here's the deal. This crazy gang is coming after me and my husband and my kids to kill us. And but my husband's army is going to come after them. But if I could give myself, distract them long enough, right, keep them here long enough so the other army would come and kill them, then I might save my kids. So she's willing to sacrifice herself to save her kids, right? And then she's waiting. She didn't have long to wait. And then she sees only one person. And I'll read this little yellow part here. By the scar on his face, she recognized Nicholas Vidal, who had set out all alone in pursuit of Judge Hidalgo. And as this was a private matter between two men, the judge's wife understood she was going to have to endure something far worse, right? Let me make this a little bigger too. Right. Far worse than a slow death. She's like, okay, this is not gonna, there's only one. She goes, a single glance at her, oh, no, sorry. At her husband was enough to convince Vidal that the judge was safely out of his reach, right? He's gone. His reach in the peaceful sleep of death, but there was his wife. a shimmering presence in the plain's glare. He leaped from his horse, strode over to her. She did not flinch or lower her gaze, and to his amazement, he realized that for the first time in his life, another person was facing him without fear. For several seconds, he stretched to eternity, they sized each other up, trying to gauge the other's strengths and their own powers of resistance. It gradually dawned on both of them that they were up against a formidable opponent. He lowered his gun, she smiled. Right? I'm gonna stop there for a minute. That's what I have highlighted. So it's interesting. So there they are. It's almost like in the Western movies where the two people are gonna, having a duel, right? They're gonna fight each other with guns. And he's coming with his gun. And he looks at her and she's like, I'm not backing down. Why? Because she's thinking of what the bigger prize is, the kid in the cave, right? And he realizes with her not fearing him, he lowers his gun and she smiles. What do you think about those two things? That he lowers his gun and she smiles, those two actions?
I believe they lowered their guard in a way.
Literally, right? Once he takes the gun off of her, right? And then she smiled because she knew something happened. And she was using her power, right? In a sense.
And
Yeah, I was gonna say that, he surrendered and she got power. She knew she was in charge.
Right. So let me read the rest of the passage, which leads us to the end, right? So Casilda won each moment of the ensuing hours. To all the wiles of seduction known since the beginning of time, she added new ones born of necessity to bring this man to the heights of rapture. Not only did she work on his body like an artist, stimulating his every fiber to pleasure, but she brought all the delicacy of her spirit into play on her side. Both knew their lives were at stake, and this added a new and terrifying dimension to their meeting. Nicholas Vidal had fled from love since birth and knew nothing of intimacy, tenderness, secret laughter, the riot of the senses, the joy of shared passion. Each minute brought the detachment of troops and the noose that much nearer, but he gladly accepted this in return for her prodigious gifts. Casilda was a passive, demure, timid woman who had been married to an austere old man in front of whom she had never even dared appear naked. Not once during that unforgettable afternoon did she forget that her aim was to win time for her children. And yet, at some point, marveling at her own possibilities, she gave herself completely and felt something akin to gratitude towards him. That was why, when she heard the soldiers in the distance, she begged him to flee to the hills. Instead, Nicholas Vidal chose to fold her in a last embrace, thus fulfilling the prophecy that had sealed his fate from the start. Sorry. Stop sharing. Good, back. Right? Let me turn this down. So, in a way, Nicholas, in his big pursuit to avoid his fate, runs right into it. Right? So in that passionate sexual they were doing together, right? Something, even though she was like, it's for my kids, it's for my kids, it's for my kids, suddenly inside of it, she was like, wait, this is amazing. This is fun. I didn't have this with my husband. So when she hears the army coming to kill him, she's like, go, run into the hills. And him saying, you know what? I can't leave you. If this is amazing, then what will be the rest of his life? Running and not being able to be with her. So he stays with her. And in a sense, loses his head, right? Over a woman. And I love that phrase that Isabelle uses, that he will lose his head over a woman, right? So lose his head, you think it's like chop the head off, right? But lose his head is also go crazy, right? Lose reason, right? So he lost reason, right? Because anybody else would be like, yo, baby, I'm gonna figure it out. See you later, right? And run to the hills, right? And at least I get to live to see you again, maybe the possibility. right? But in a way, he lost his head. He lost his mind. He got totally wrapped up in her, and instead, now his fate gets fulfilled, right? The fulfillment of fate, right? So those are the plot things that we talked about, right? She marries the judge, she changes the judge, right? The judge tries to trap Nicholas's mother. She changes the judge again. He lets the mother out. She kills herself. Because she kills herself, Nicholas comes after him. Because he comes after him, the judge runs, right? Then the judge has a heart attack. And then Casilda has to face him. And then, boom, this fiery, passionate, encounter that changes everything, right? Changes him, changes, So the to jump to kind of jump to the answer. So I think when I was speaking, that moment when I paused about, Nicholas lowers the gun and she smiles, very often that's a climactic moment, right? Because that's when he does something different that changes his life forever, right? That changes the rest of the story, right? So in that sense, the climax comes very end. You might think all the lovemaking and all that kind of stuff and him, but that moment when he lowers his gun and she smiles, right? So if you were doing a paper about the dramatic arc of the story, you can kind of build, what happens, the exposition, the rising action, all the things we were just talking about. So that's another way you can approach writing this paper. We already talked about a character study, which can be of any of the characters, could be several of the characters, or a character which is Casilda, could be just one, right? So you have those options. Let me continue with the end of the PowerPoint so we can end it. And then, and because I think though, let's see, I want to get to what, and then I'll see what you wrote about. Share screen. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. So we talked about the plot. We don't have to drop it in and slide. Okay. So the role of fate or destiny, right? That was one of the big ideas and themes of the story, right? So, so you all did your paper, right? And, oh, sorry. So fate or destiny, I'm doing a little bit of shorthand, right? Fate or destiny. I'm going to stop a second. I'm sorry. I know I keep saying when to keep going, but I got to stop. So like fate, tell me what you think about fate. What do you think about fate? Do you believe in fate? And you believe in fate? Like, or destiny, like you're destined, this is going to, any of you have that belief or understanding? Or is it something that just exists in stories?
I'm sorry. I would say something.
Mhm.
Fate to me, it's something that can happen in the future, or prediction, or something you see coming, or you can see coming in the near future or so.
Mhm. Like what? So you're saying that yes to fate?
Having, let's say, Casilda having a husband,
Mhm.
that can be fate for her, or yeah, being able to make a new life after all the tragic events and her experience with having a older man.
Right. But to be clear, fate is to say, like him, his fate was you will
Die.
lose your head over a woman, right? And he could be like, you know what? I'm not down with that. I'm not losing the head over a woman. And they fight and fight and fight, right? There's another story. Have I talked about Oedipus in the class? Yes, no, maybe. Anyway, I'll talk about Oedipus for 5 seconds. So there's a very famous Greek tragedy called Oedipus. And Oedipus, you know what Oedipus's fate was? It was to kill his father and marry his mother, right? That was his fate. This little tiny baby, some, spiritual person looked at it and said, that baby, he's going to kill his father and marry his mother. So what do you think the parents do?
Kill him.
Kill him?
They want to kill the baby. They're like, you ain't going to kill me and you ain't going to marry her, right? Because if you believe in fate, so they give this little baby to some man and say, go into the woods and leave that baby out in the woods. Let some animal eat it. I don't care. leave it out in the woods, little tiny baby. So the man brings the baby to the woods and he can't do it. He can't leave the little baby there. So what does he do? He brings it to a town very far away and gives it to a couple. And then he comes back and says, I left the baby in the woods. And they all think it's over. So then Oedipus grows up, and one day he's traveling on a road and he encounters this man. They get into a fight and he kills him. Turns out it's the king and it's his father. And he keeps going to the town and they hear that the king is gone. The queen is very sad and he goes to comfort her and she falls in love with him and they end up getting married. And then you learn out later on that it's a tragedy. She ends up killing herself, the mother, when she finds out, and Oedipus pokes his eyes out, and it's very sad, right? But here was, again, here are characters trying to avoid fate. So fate means that there's an idea of something that is unavoidable. Like you can try and try and try, but you can't avoid it, right?
Destiny.
Yes.
I believe it's not that I believe, but it's a possibility that thing happens. Because something happened in my life with one of my nephew. He was killed, and I had everything to avoid it, and it happens. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's gonna take me time. But if that day he would come to my house, it wouldn't happen. But probably gonna have something else in the way coming to my house because I was waiting for him, and he never showed.
Mm.
And it was and it's and then I was talking with some people, the kind of religions, Mormones was the name of, I don't know, and then we were talking about destination and destiny or whatever, and there are things that that you can't avoid it because that's the person destiny probably at that time at the moment.
So it's interesting that we could talk about, and sorry about to hear about your cousin, and thank you for being open and sharing that with us. But it's interesting, that idea of fate, right? That somebody makes a prediction and you can't avoid it. And then some of us, we like, yeah, if somebody makes a prediction about something, I'm gonna, if they make the prediction that I'm gonna win the lotto, that's something I'm not gonna avoid. But when they're usually a tragic, predictions, the characters try to avoid them. So you could believe one way or the other, you'd be like, no, there's no way. And of course, I think that it could look different ways, right? Like I was born to a poor family and I grew up in the projects, right? They say somebody like that, with that kind of background probably cannot achieve a lot of things in life, may not have that. And so we try to avoid, that's in a way kind of like an idea of fate, right? A destiny, that I'm destined to perpetuate the same things that my environment and neighborhood have. And we try to avoid that fate, right? All of you may be doing in the process of that, as we all try to improve our lives, right? In a way, we're trying to make a difference, right? It's a little different, but we're trying to improve our fate, our destiny, have a different destiny, different fate. But I put that discussion because I think that's one of the things we do in literature, that it's about the story, right? But it's also about us, right? And where you fall in this belief system, and whether how you work on all that. But yeah, so fate is one of the big themes inside of this story, how and exploring fate. So I'm gonna jump, let's see, hit this, share screen. But let's see, we'll see what you all wrote in your essays, because I'm curious to see that. And but here is share screen, come on. Here are some of the themes in The Judge's Wife, right? The exploration of fate is an idea of a theme. A woman's strength, right? The strength of this woman, of Casilda in particular. A mother's love and courage, right? That's a theme, like the fact that Casilda was willing to sacrifice herself for her family, but for her kids in particular. The transformative power of love, which is different, where one can lose one's head or reason, but we can see how love, like Nicholas fell in love and maybe in lust, but definitely it was more than that, right? Because they're saying the pleasure, the quiet laughter, the riotous. So he was having a loving experience with Casilda. So that was transformative when he felt love for her. The judge, right? Casilda also had a transformation. Casilda herself had a transformation when she was with him. And then there's the law versus the outlaw, right? So the idea of, the judge represented the law. He was a symbolic character of what the law is. And Nicholas was a symbolic character of the outlaw, right? Of the guy who goes against the law, who is outside of the law, who is the maverick, who is the criminal in some cases. And then another idea is the moral gray area, right? That the idea of like what is right, what is wrong, that there could be like a middle place with all of that. So I wanted to share those ideas of themes and we'll see what you all come up with. If there's some alignment with it, or you came up with other themes, which is completely possible, within the story of other things. There is, we could look at there's the relationship between, we talk about law and outlaw, but the idea of like the kind of idea of masculinity is also another theme inside of here, how it looks for the judge and how it looks for Nicholas Vidal, right? So there's a lot of ways I added that other theme so that in case any of you looked at that list and you were like, oh crap, I didn't write about any of that, right? It's okay, because there's more to it, right? Gregory.
Yeah, for me, I think I must have misunderstood about the themes, because what I did was I said it was like drama, suspense, action, romance. So are those considered themes, or is that
Well,
under another category?
Well, first of all, you have to think, well, some of those things might be different categories, right? But first of all, a theme is like a main idea, right? And it could be an idea and a moral, right? Something that the story is exploring or explaining, right? And then again, when you're writing essays, this is why this is an exercise, so that way we can, because you're writing about something different, right? Before we might be writing, before you say a theme is love, right? Because in a poem, that could be the theme. But now the themes get a little more complex, right? When you're dealing with fiction and literature. So I shouldn't say more complex. They are maybe have a different aspect, right? So I don't want to think the themes in poems are not complex. They're complex. And there could be simple as well. So yes, so the idea of a theme is usually the main idea, right? That's one way to understand the theme, is it is the main idea, right? And so it could be, and in this case, one of the main ideas or the main things that they explore is fate. And you know that right from the first sentence, right? The first sentence, it says that it was destined, and as Gregory was paraphrasing, by the Turkish women and etc., that he would lose his head over a woman, right? And at the very end, he loses his head over a woman. So it's kind of like one of the ideas. Okay, but this is great. That's the whole idea of a writing exercise. It gives you an opportunity to use try to figure something out, and then we come back and discuss, and then you can make a change to it.
Are you going to share that PowerPoint with us? Or
yes, I will update it. There's a version of it in there, but the one I changed it a little bit for class today, so I'll upload this PowerPoint into class today.
Thank you.
So I just want to speak a little bit about the next story, and I have to end class just a little early, and I want to take questions in case people have questions. But the other story we had to read was Cathedral, right? I asked you to read for today. And I can't understand Joanni's face, if she liked it or didn't like it. She just made a face.
It's interesting. I like it. I like it.
So I'm gonna ask you to do one thing for Wednesday. That will also give me a chance to look at everything you've written and respond. So for Wednesday, I'm gonna ask you to tell me what you think happened at the end of the story, right? Because if you got a chance, hopefully you got a chance to read it, and if not, then read it. right? Because it's one of these stories, like you're like, what happens? Like a blind man
Cathedral
shows.
is one.
Say it again.
Cathedral is one. It left me wondering if he had a change or not after the experience.
Right. So I want you all to
If it
think about it,
changed.
read the story, and let me know, what do you think happened at the end? That's going to be your question that I'm going to put in the discussion. What happened? What do you explain the ending however you understand it? If you say, I don't know what happened at the end. At the end, this happened and this happened and this happened. Or you could say, like Johnny's wondering, did it change? Did something change? And if something changed, what changed? Right? So I want you to think about it, because in the story, what happens? A blind man shows up, right? Was a friend of a wife. They drink a lot. They have
A lot. They got drunk. Right?
they
And they
smoke.
started smoking.
Right, and they smoke. It says dope, but dope
Yeah.
means weed. Okay. They smoke, they drink a lot, they smoke weed, and then the blind man gets him to draw a cathedral on a piece of paper. Right?
And he
That's
was
what happens.
like,
Right. That's
yeah.
what happens. Right. So it doesn't seem like it's a lot of plot. Seems like a lot of character, right? And so I want you to think about, like, so next when we come back, we'll do the PowerPoint like I just did with Isabelle Allende's piece. I'm gonna do it with Cathedral, and then but I want you all to think about, that's gonna be your homework. You only got a little tiny bit of homework, and it's gonna be to tell me, what do you think happened at the end. I'll give you a little preview too, if any of you want to read. The next story that we will need to read for next week, for Monday, is going to be Forgiveness by Rebecca Brown. That's the story we're going to read for next week. So if any of you want to get a head start, but there's not going to be a writing assignment for Wednesday. It'll be due on the weekend. But that's going to be the next story. So for Wednesday, I just want you to do respond to, like, what do you think happens at the end of Cathedral? That's going to be a written response, like one paragraph, right? Or it could be, don't any of you say, I don't know, professor, and that's your assignment. I'm not gonna, you have to say why you don't know. I couldn't think about it, just I don't know, right? But so think about it a little bit. That's where we're at. Challenge yourself, even if you're like still scratching your head and saying, what the hell happened at the end of that story? Push yourself to think about it.
But it will be like putting an ending to, like, making your own ending to that story.
Just writing your understanding of it. I don't want you to write something, a different ending. Just like, how do you understand? Like, what happened? Like, you just started saying, I don't know, did something change? So I want you to entertain that thought, John. Did something change? And think about it. And if you think something did change, say what it is. And if you don't think anything changed, say, no, I don't think so because of these reasons, right? So, and that could be one thing you think about, but just tell me what you think about the ending. And then read Rebecca Brown's Forgiveness. And that one is in the packet as well. So you can read, that's going to be you won't have to read it till later, but in case some of you want to stay ahead of or stay in step, I'm just giving you a little bit of a heads up since you have a small homework assignment. Okay. All right, so we're going to pause, and certainly if you want to do an office hour with me, send me an email and we can work that out. And then I'll be quiet for 10 seconds to see if there's any questions. No questions. All right, well, I see Cesar's in a taxi and Mabelle's kids seem to be behaving themselves at the moment, and everybody else is in their place. And thank you all for participating today, and I will see you all on Wednesday in a few days. All right.
Hi, Professor.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you, Professor.
Good
Have a
night.
good night.
Yeah,
Bye,
you all
guys.
leave.
Be well.
Patterson has a question, so I'll hang out for Patterson. Good night, everybody else.
Oh,
Good night, everyone. Thank you, Professor.
good night. Good night.
All right, Patterson.
Did you see my email?
No, hold on a second. Let me open this up right now. Okay, is it, you sent me is it about your essay letter to New York?
Yeah.
Okay, I
And
see.
then I sent another email, but I don't think the other one went through.
Yeah, no, I only see this one. I only see one from you. So I can
Yeah,
take a
because
look at
Monday, my connection was so low, so
oh,
I tried to join, but it didn't work.
all right. Okay, so I'll take a look at this and I'll respond to you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Did you put the grades? I didn't see anything.
I email you the grade. So if when I fix it, so if this is your submission and you didn't submit it, I will look at this, edit it, and send you it in the email.
Okay,
Okay.
okay,
All
thank you.
right.
Good night. Mhm.
Good night.
Professor, can you upload the last recording, please, on the fiction?
Okay. Yes, I will have to upload it. I will do that.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Have a good night now.
Right.
Professor.
Yes, that's that.
So I've been like overwhelmed these past couple days. So I did skip the first assignment, which is the 2 paragraphs, and then the third assignment, which is the one that was due today, the 1 paragraph.
Mhm.
Is it okay if I make it up?
Oh yeah, yeah. Please do. Yeah, make it up.
All right, so
You
I'll
can
do
do it by
it.
Wednesday. That'll be great.
But I did do the essay because I knew that was like long. That was the
Okay.
biggest. So I knew.
All right. Cool. So
I
then,
do
did you get a grade for the essay or not yet?
which one?
The
The one
essay.
that was just submitted?
No, the essay. You said the long one.
No, the essay no, the first essay. No, I'm talking about the essay last night.
Oh, that's
The
night. Yeah.
5 page, but I did like drag it.
Okay.
I read the story though, so
All right. I'll take a look.
all right.
All
Thank you,
right.
Prof.
Have a good day. Have a good night at work.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Take care. All right, take care, everybody.